How do I look? Very imposing. I like the new suit. It's kind of a gray metallic. They developed the fabric while doing the moonshots. Benny is doing a dance of door opening and hood popping out on the lot with a couple so young they keep looking at each other for confirmation, both talking at once and then falling silent simultaneously, paralyzed by their wish not to be tricked out of a single dollar. August sales are on, and Toyota is offering $1,000 rebates. In the old days, you sold only at their list price, no haggling, take it or leave it, a quality product. Their old purity has been corrupted by American methods. Toyota has stooped to the scramble. You know, he tells Elvira, in all the years the lot has been selling these cars, I don't recall it ever being visited by an actual Japanese. I thought they all stayed over there in Toyota City enjoying the tea ceremony. And the geisha girls, Elvira says slyly, like Mr. Uno. Harry smiles at the topical allusion. This girl, woman, keeps up. Yeah, he wasn't numero uno very long, was he? Her earrings today are like temple bells, little curved lids of dull silver wired together in trembling oblongs the size of butterfly cocoons. They shiver with a touch of indignation when she tells him, "It's really Nelson and Lyle should be facing Mr. Shimada." He shrugs. "What can you do? The lawyer got Lyle on the phone finally, and the guy just laughed at him. Said he was taking oxygen just to get out of bed and go to the toilet and could die any time. Furthermore, he said the disease had spread to his brain and he had no idea what the lawyer was talking about. And he'd had to sell his computer and didn't keep any of the disks. In other words, he told the lawyer to go jump in the lake. Suppressing fuck himself like that was maybe a way of courting Elvira, he doesn't know. Late in the game as it is, you keep trying. He likes her being so thin. She makes Prue and even Janice look thick, and there is something cool and quiet about her he finds comforting. Like a television screen when you can't hear the words, just see the flicker. I had to laugh, he says, of Lyle's last communications. Dying has its advantages. She asks at his side, "Won't Nelson be home in a week or so?" "That's the schedule," Harry says. "Summer flies by, doesn't it? You notice it in the evening now. It's still warm, but gets dark earlier and earlier. It's a thing you forget from year to year, that late summer darkness. The cicadas, that smell of baked-out lawns. Except this summer's been so damn rainy. In my little garden, God, the weeds won't stop growing, and the lettuce and broccoli are so leggy they're falling over. And the pea vines have spread like Virginia creeper up over the fence and into the neighbor's yard. At least it hasn't been so terribly hot like it was the summer before," Elvira says, "when everybody kept talking about the greenhouse effect. Maybe there is no greenhouse effect." "Oh, there is," Rabbit tells her, with a conviction he didn't know he had. Across Route 111, above the red hat-shaped roof of the Pizza Hut, a flock of starlings, already migrating south, speckle on telephone wires like a bar of musical notation. "I won't live to see it," he says, "but you will, and my grandchildren. New York, Philly, their docks will be underwater once Antarctica starts melting, all of the Jersey Shore. Ronnie Harrison and Ruth, what a shit, that guy." "How is he doing? Have you heard much?" "Nelson." "He's dropped us a couple of cards of the Liberty Bell. He sounded cheerful. In a way, the kid's been always looking for more structure than we could ever give him. And I guess a rehab program is big on structure. He talks to Prue on the phone, but they don't encourage too much outside contact at this point." "What does Prue think about everything?" Does Harry imagine it an edge of heightened interest here, as if the sound on the TV set clicked back in? "Hard to know what Prue thinks," he says. "I have the impression she was about ready to pack it in, the marriage, before he sent himself off. She and Janice and the kids have been up at the Poconos." "That makes it lonely for you," Elvira Ullenbach says. "Could this be a feeler? Is he supposed to have her come on over? Have a couple daiquiris in the den, stroke the dark nape of her neck, see if her pussy matches up in that slanty spare bedroom where all the old playboys were stashed in the closet when they moved in. The thought of that wiry young female body seeking to slake its appetites on his affects him like the thought of an avalanche. It would make a wreck of his routine. At my age, I don't mind it, he says. I can watch the TV shows I want, National Geographic, Disney, World of Nature. When Janice is there, she makes us watch all these family situation shows with everybody clowning around in the living room. This Roseanne, I asked her what the hell she sees in it. She told me, I like her. She's fat and messy and mean like most of the women in America. I watch less and less. I try to have just one beer and go to bed early. The young woman silently offers to move away back to her cubicle in the direction of Paraguay. But he likes her near him and abruptly asks, "You know who I'm sick of hearing about?" "Who?" "Pete Rose. Did you read in the Standard the other day how he's been in hot water before, in 1980, when he and a lot of the other Phils were caught taking amphetamines and the club traded away Randy Leach, the only player who admitted to it, and the rest of 'em just brazened it through?" "I glanced at it. It was a brewer doctor supplying the prescriptions." "That's right, our own little Berg. So that's why he thinks he can bluff it through now. Nobody else has to pay for what they do. Everybody else gets away with everything. Ollie North, drug dealers. What with the jails being full and everybody such a bleeding heart anyway? Break the law, burn the flag, who the fuck cares?" "Don't get yourself upset, Harry," she says in her maternal, retreating mode. "The world is full of cheaters." "Yeah, we should know." She makes no response at all, having turned her back. Maybe she had been balling Nelson after all. "I always thought he was an ugly ball player anyway," he feels compelled to say concerning Rose. "If you have to do it all with hustle and grit, you shouldn't be out there." Out there, in the dog days outdoors, whose muggy alternation of light and shadow flickeringly gives him back his own ominous reflection, Harry notices that the refurbished yew hedge — he had a lawn service replace the dead bushes and renew the bark mulch — has collected a number of wax paper pizza wrappers and styrofoam coffee cups that have blown in from Route 111. He can't have their Japanese visitor see a mess like that. He goes outside, and the hot, polluted air, bouncing off the asphalt, takes his breath away. The left side of his ribs gives a squeeze. He puts a nitrostat to melt beneath his tongue before he begins to stoop. The more waste paper he gathers, the more it seems there is. Candy wrappers, cigarette pack cellophane, advertising flyers, and whole pages of newspaper wrinkled by rain and browned by the sun. Big soft drink cups with the plastic lid still on, and the straw still in, and the dirty water from melted ice still sloshing around. There is no end of crud in the world. He should have brought out a garbage bag. He has both hands full and can feel his face getting red as he tries to hold yet one more piece of crumpled, sticky cardboard in his fanned fingers. A limousine cracklingly pulls into the lot while Harry is still picking up the trash, and he has to run inside to cram it all into the wastebasket in his office. Puffing, his heart thudding, his metallic gray suit coat pulling at the buttons, he rushes back across the showroom to greet Mr. Shimada at the entrance, shaking his hand with a hand unwashed of street grit, dried sugar, and still sticky pizza topping. Mr. Shimada is an impeccable, compact man of about 5'6", carrying an amazingly thin ox-blood-red briefcase and wearing a smoke-blue suit with an almost invisible pinstripe, tailored to display a dapper breadth of his gold-linked French cuffs and high white collar, on a shirt with a pale blue body. He looks dense, like a beanbag filled to the corners with buckshot, and in good physical trim, though stocky, with a burnish of California tan on his not unfriendly face. "It's very nice meeting you," he says. "Area most nice." He speaks English easily, but with enough of an accent to cost Harry a second's response time answering him. "Well, not around here exactly," he answers, instantly thinking that this is tactless, for why would Toyota want to locate its franchise in an ugly area? "I mean, the farm country is what we're famous for, barns with hex signs and all that." He wonders if he should explain hex sign and decides it's not worth it. "Would you like to look around the facility?" At the setup? In case facility didn't register. Talking to foreigners really makes you think about the language. Mr. Shimada slowly, stiffly turns his head and shoulders together, one way and then the other, to take in the showroom. "I see," he smiles. "Also in Torrance I study many photos and Fropran. Oh, lovely lady." Elvira has left her desk and sashays toward their visitor, sucking in her cheeks to make herself look more glamorous. Mr. Shimada. Harry had been practicing the name, telling himself it was like Ramada with shit at the beginning, only to botch it in the crunch. "This is Miss Ohlenbach, one of our best sales representatives." Mr. Shimada first gives her an instinctive little hands-at-the-sides bow. When they shake hands, it's like both of them are trying to knock each other out with their smiles, they hold them so long. "It's good idea to have both sexes setting," he says to Harry. "More and more the common thing." "I don't know why it took us all so long to think of it," Harry admits. "Good idea take time," the other man says, curbing his smile a little, letting an admonitory sternness tug downward his rather full yet flat lips. Harry remembers from his boyhood in World War II how very cruel the Japanese were to their prisoners on Bataan. The first thing you heard about them after Pearl Harbor was that they were ridiculously small, manning tiny submarines and planes called Zeros. And then, as those early Pacific defeats rolled in, that they were fanatic in the service of their emperor, robot monkeys that had to be torched out of their caves with flamethrowers. What a long way we've come since then. Harry feels one of his surges of benevolence, of approval of a world that isn't asking for it. Mr. Shimada seems to be asking Elvira if she prays. "Play tennis, you mean?" she asks back. "Yes, as a matter of fact, whenever I can. How did you know?" His flat face breaks into twinkling creases, and, quick as a monkey, he taps her wrist, where a band of relative pallor shows on her sun-browned skin. "Sweatband," he says proudly. "That's clever," Elvira says. "You must play, too, in California. Everybody does." "Oh, free time. Revel 5, hoping Revel 4. "That's fabulous," she comes back, but a sideways upward glance at Harry asks how much longer she has to be a geisha girl. "Good fetch, no backhand," Mr. Shimada tells her, demonstrating. "Turn your back to the net and take the racket back low," Elvira tells him, also demonstrating. "Hit the ball out front. Don't let it play you." "Talk just as pro," Mr. Shimada tells her, beaming. No doubt about it, Elvira is impressive. You can see how rangy and quick she would be on the court. Harry is beginning to relax. When the phantom tennis lesson is over, he takes their guest on a quick tour through the office space and through the shelved tunnels of the parts department, where Roddy, the assistant parts manager, a viciously pretty youth with long, lank hair he keeps flicking back from his face and hands filmed with gray grease, gives them a dirty, white-eyed look. Harry doesn't introduce them for fear of besmirching Mr. Shimada with a touch of grease. He leads him to the brass-barred door of the rackety, cavernous garage where Manny, the service manager Harry had inherited from Fred Springer 15 years ago, has been replaced by Arnold, a plump young man with an advanced degree from Volk School, where he was taught to wear washable coveralls that give him the figure of a Cupid doll or a snowman. Mr. Shimada hesitates at the verge of the echoing garage. Men's curses cut through the hammering of metal on metal, and takes a step backward, asking, "Employee morale good?" This must be morale. Harry thinks of the mechanics, their insatiable gripes and constant coffee breaks and demands for ever more costly fringe benefits, and their frequent hungover absences on Monday and suspiciously early departures on Friday, and says, "Very good. They clear $22 an hour with bonuses and benefits. The first job I ever took when I was 15, I got 35 cents an hour." Mr. Shimada is not interested. "Black employees, are any? I see none." "Yeah, well, we'd like to hire more, but it's hard to find qualified ones. We had a man a couple years ago, had good hands and got along with everybody, but we had to let him go finally because he kept showing up late or not showing up at all. When we called him on it, he said he was on Afro-American time." Harry is ashamed to tell him what the man's nickname had been, Blackie. "At least we don't still sell black Sambo dolls with nigger lips like they do in Tokyo," he saw on 60 Minutes this summer. "Toyota strive to be fair practices employer," says Mr. Shimada. "Wants to be good citizen of your pluralistic society. In plant in Georgetown, Kentucky, many blacks work, not just assembly line, executive positions." "We'll work on it," Rabbit promises him. "This is a kind of conservative area, but it's coming along." "Very pretty area." "Right." Back in the showroom, Harry feels obliged to explain. "My son picked these colors for the walls and woodwork. My son Nelson. I would have gone for something a little less, choice, but he's been the effective manager here while I've been spending half the year in Florida. My wife loves the sun down there. She plays tennis, by the way, loves the game." Mr. Shimada beams. His lips seem flattened as if by pressing up against glass, and his eyeglasses, their squarish gold rims, seem set exceptionally tight against his eyes. "We know Nelson Angstrom," he says. He has trouble with the many consonants of the last name, making it Angstrom. "A most famous man at Toyota Company." A constriction in Harry's chest and a watery looseness below his belt tell him that they have arrived, after many courtesies, at the point of the visit. "Want to come into my office and sit?" "With pleasure." "Anything one of the girls could get you? Coffee? Tea? Not like your tea, of course, just a bag of Lipton's." "Is fine without." Rather unceremoniously, he enters Harry's office and sits on the vinyl customer's chair with padded chrome arms facing the desk. He sets his wonderfully thin briefcase on his lap and lightly folds his hands upon it, showing 2 dazzling breadths of white cuff. He waits for Harry to seat himself behind the desk and then begins what seems to be a prepared speech. "Always," he says, "we in Japan admire America. As boy during occupation, looked way up to big GI soldiers, their happy, easy-go ways. Enemy soldiers, but not bad men. Powerful men. Our Emperor's advisers have read him down unfortunate ways. So General MacArthur, he seemed to us as Emperor had been, distant and first-rate. We worked hard to do what he suggests, rebuild burned cities, learn democratic ways. Japanese very humble at first in regard to America. You know Toyota story. At first, very modest, then bigger. We produce a better product for the little man's money, yes? You ask for it, we got it, yes?" "Good slogan," Harry tells him. "I like it better than some of the recent ones have been coming down." But Mr. Shimada does not expect to be even slightly interrupted. His burnished, manicured hands firmly flatten on the thin ox-blood briefcase, and he inclines his upper body forward to make his voice clear. "Nevertheless, these years of post-war Japanese man and woman have great respect for United States, like Big Brother. But in recent times, Big Brother act like Riddle Brother, always cry and complain. Want many favors in trade, saying Japanese unfair competition. Why unfair? Make something, cheaper even with duty and transportation costs, people like, people buy. American way in old times. But in new times, America make nothing, just do mergers, do acquisitions, lower taxes, raise national debt. Nothing comes out, all goes in, foreign goods, foreign capital. America take everything, give nothing, like big black hole." Mr. Shimada is proud of this up-to-date analogy and of his unanswerable command of English. He smiles to himself and opens, with a double snap as startling as a gunshot, his briefcase. From it he takes a single sheet of stiff, creamy paper, sparsely decorated with typed figures. "According to figures here, between November 88 and May 89, Springer Motors failed to report sale of 9 Toyota vehicles totaling $137,400 at factory price. This sum accumulating interest come to, as of this date, $145,800. With one of his reflexive, half-suppressed bows, he hands the paper across the desk. Harry covers it with his big hand and says, "Yeah, well, but its accountants we hired reported all this to you. It's not as if Springer Motors as a company is trying to cheat anybody. It's a screwy and unusual situation that developed and that's being corrected. My son had a drug problem and hired a bad egg as chief accountant, and together they ripped us all off. The Brewer Trust, too, in another scam. They had a dead mutual friend buying cars, would you believe it? But listen, my wife and I, technically she's the owner here, we have every intention of paying Mid-Atlantic Toyota back every penny we owe, and I'd like to see sometime how you're computing that interest." Mr. Shimada leans back a bit and makes his briefest speech. "How soon?" Harry takes a plunge. "End of August. 3 weeks away. They might have to take out a bank loan, and Brewer Trust is already on their case. Well, let Janice's accountants work it out if they're so smart." Mr. Shimada blinks behind those lenses embedded in his flat face and seems to nod in concord. "End of August, interest computed at 12% monthly, compounded as in standard TMCC loan." He snaps shut his briefcase and balances it on its edge beside his chair. He gazes obliquely at the framed photographs on Harry's desk. Janice, when she still had bangs, in a spangly long dress 3 or 4 years ago, about to go off to the Valhalla Village New Year's Eve party. A flashlit color print Fern Drexel took with a nickel mat Bernie had just given her for a Hanukkah present, and that came out surprisingly well. Janice's face in anticipation of the party, looking younger than her years, a bit overexposed and out of focus and starry-eyed. Nelson's high school graduation picture, in a blazer and necktie, but his hair down to his shoulders, long as a girl's. And, left over from Nelson's tenure at this desk, a framed black-and-white posed school photo of Harry in his basketball uniform, holding the ball above his shining right shoulder, as if to get off a shot, his hair crew-cut, his eyes sleepy, his tank top stenciled MJ. Mr. Shimada's less upright posture in the chair indicates a new, less formal level of discourse. Young people now most interesting, he decides to say. Not scared of starving as through most human history. Not scared of atom bomb as until recently. But scared of something. Not happy. In Japan, too. Blue jeans, rock music not make happiness enough. In former times in Japan, very simple things make men happy. Moonlight on Fish Pond at certain moment. Cricket singing in Bamboo Grove. Very small things bring very great feeling. Japan, a little island country, must make do with very near nothing. Not like endless China, not like U.S., no oil wells, no great spaces. We have only our people, their discipline. Living now 5 years in California, it disappoints me, the lack of discipline in people of America. Many good qualities, of course. Good tennis, good hearts. Roads are fun. I have many most dear American friends. Always they apologize to me for Japanese internment camps in Franklin Roosevelt days. Always I say to them, surprised, was war? In war, people need discipline. Not just in war, peace a kind of war also. We fight now not Americans and British, but Nissan, Honda, Ford. Toyota agency must be a place of discipline, a place of order. Harry feels he must interrupt. He doesn't like the trend of this monologue. We think this agency is. Sales have been up 8% this summer, bucking the national trend. I'm always saying to people, Toyota's been good to us and we've been good to Toyota. No more, sorry, Mr. Shimada says simply, and resumes. In United States is fascinating for me struggle between order and freedom. Everybody mention freedom, all papers, television, anchor people, everybody. Much love and talk of freedom. Skateboarders want freedom to use beach boardwalks and knock down poor old people. Black men with radios want freedom to self-express with super jumbo noise. Men want freedom to have guns and shoot others on freeways in random sport. In California, dog shit much surprised me. Everywhere dog shit. Dogs must have important freedom to shit everywhere. Dog freedom more important than green grass and cement pavement. In U.S., Toyota Company hope to make islands of order in ocean of freedom. Hope to strike proper balance between needs of outer world and needs of inner being, between what in Japan we call giri and ninjo. He leans forward and, with a flash of wide white cuff, taps the page of figures on Harry's desk. Too much disorder. Too much dog shit. Pay by end of August. No prosecution for criminal activities, but no more Toyota franchise at Singer Motors. Springer, Harry says automatically. Listen, he pleads, no one feels worse about my son's falling apart than I do. Now it is Mr. Shimada who interrupts. His own speech, with whatever beautiful shadows in Japanese it was forming in his mind, has whipped him up. Not just son, he says. Who is father and mother of such son? Where are they? In Florida, enjoying sunshine and tennis, while young boy plays games with autos. Nelson Ankerstrom too much a boy still to be managing Toyota agency. He ruses face for Toyota Company. This statement tugs his flat lips far down in a pop-eyed scowl. Hopelessly, Harry argues, you want the sales staff young to attract the young customers. Nelson will be 33 in a month. He thinks it would be a waste of breath and maybe offensive to explain to Mr. Shimada that at that same age Jesus Christ was old enough to be crucified and redeem mankind. He makes a final plea. You'll lose all the goodwill. For 30 years the people of Brewer have known where to come to buy Toyotas, out here right on Route 111. No more, Mr. Shimada states. Too much dog shit, Mr. Angstrom. His third try, and he almost has it. You got to hand it to them. Toyota does not enjoy bad games played with its autos. He picks up his slim briefcase and stands. You keep invoice. Many more papers to arrive. Most present, if regretful visit, and good talk on topics of general interest. Perhaps you would be kind to discuss with remote driver best way to find Route 422. Mr. Kraus has agency there. You're going to see Rudy? He used to work here. I taught him all he knows. Mr. Shimada has stiffened in that faintly striped smoky blue suit. Good teacher, not always good parent. If he's going to be the only Toyota in town, he ought to get rid of Mazda. That Wankel engine never really worked out, too much like a squirrel cage. Harry feels lightheaded now that the axe has fallen. Anticipation is the worst. Letting go has its pleasant side. Good luck with Lexus, by the way, he says. People don't think luxury when they think Toyota, but things can change. Things change. says Mr. Shimada, is world's sad secret. Out in the showroom, he asks, "Rovry ready?" Elvira, with her clicking brisk walk, traverses the showroom floor, her earrings doing a dance along the points of her jaw. Their visitor asks, "Could please have business card in case of future reference?" She digs one out of her suit pocket, and Mr. Shimada accepts it, studies it seriously, bows with his hands at his side, and then, to strike a jocular American note, imitates a tennis backhand. "You've got it," she tells him. "Take it back low." He bows again, and, turning to Harry, beams so broadly his eyeglass frames are lifted by the creasing of his face. "Good luck with many problems. Perhaps before too late should buy Rexus at dearer price." This is, it would seem, a little Japanese joke. Harry gives the manicured hand a gritty squeeze. "Don't think I can afford even a Corolla now," he says, and in a reflex of goodwill, really, manages a little bow of his own. He accompanies his visitor outdoors to the limousine, whose black driver is leaning against the fender eating a slice of pizza, and a cloud pulls back from the sun. A colorless, merciless dog-day brilliance makes Harry wince. All joking falls away, and he abruptly feels fragile and ill with loss. He cannot imagine the lot without the tall blue Toyota sign, the glinting, still lake of well-made cars in slightly bitter Oriental colors. Poor Janice. She'll be knocked for a loop. She'll feel she's let her father down. But she doesn't react too strongly. She is more interested these days in her real estate courses. Janice has completed one pair of 10-week courses and is into another. She has long phone conversations with her classmates about the next exam or the fascinating personality of their teacher, Mr. Lister with his exciting new beard. "I'm sure Nelson has some plan," she says, "and if he doesn't, we'll all sit down and negotiate one." Negotiate? 200,000 disappearing dollars, and you don't have Toyotas to sell anymore. Were they really so great, Harry? Nelson hated them. Why can't we get an American franchise? Isn't Detroit making a big comeback? Not so big they can afford Nelson Angstrom. She pretends he's joking, saying, "Aren't you awful?" Then she looks at his face, is startled and saddened by what she sees there, and crosses their kitchen to reach up and touch his face. "Harry," she says, "you are taking it hard. Don't. Daddy used to say, for every up there's a down, and for every down there's an up. Nelson will be home in a week, and we can't do a thing really until then." Outside the kitchen window screen, where moths keep bumping, the early August evening has that blended tint peculiar to the season, of light being withdrawn while summer's warmth lingers. As the days grow shorter, a dryness of dead grass and churring insects has crept in even through this summer of heavy rains, of more thunderstorms and flash floods in Diamond County than Harry can ever remember. Out in their yard he notices now a few dead leaves shed by the weeping cherry, and the flower stalks of the violet hosta dying back. In his mood of isolation and lassitude, he is drawing closer to the earth, the familiar mother with his infancy still in her skirts, in the shadows beneath the bushes. "Shit," he says, a word charged for him with magic since the night 3 months ago when Prue used it to announce her despairing decision to sleep with him, once. What kind of plans can Nelson have? He'll be lucky to stay out of jail. You can't go to jail for stealing from your own family. He had a medical problem. He was sick the same way you were sick, only it was addiction instead of angina. You're both getting better. He hears in the things she says more and more other voices, opinions and a wisdom gathered away from him. "Who have you been talking to?" he says. "You sound like that know-it-all Doris Kaufman." "Eberhard. I haven't talked to Doris for weeks and weeks. But some of the women taking the real estate program, we go out afterwards to this little place on Pine Street that's not too rough, at least until later, and one of them, Francie Alvarez, says you got to think of any addiction as a medical condition just like they caught the flu, or otherwise you'd go crazy blaming the addicts around you as if they can help it. So what makes you think Nelson's cure will take? Just because it cost us $6,000, that doesn't mean a thing to the kid. He just went in to let things blow over. You told me yourself he told you once he loves Coke more than anything in the world, more than you, more than me, more than his own kids. Well, sometimes in life you have to give up things you love." Charlie. Is that who she's thinking of to make her voice sound so sincere, so sadly wise and wisely firm? Her eyes for this moment in dying August light have a darkness that invites him in, to share a wisdom her woman's life has taught her. Her fingers touch his cheek again, a touch like a fly that when you're trying to fall asleep keeps settling on your face, the ticklish thin skin here and there. It's annoying. He tries to shake her off with a snap of his head. She pulls her hand back, but still stares so solemnly. It's you I worry about more than Nelson. Is the angina coming back? The breathlessness? A twinge now and then, he admits. Nothing a pill doesn't fix. It's just something I'm going to have to live with. I wonder if you shouldn't have had the bypass. The balloon was bad enough. Sometimes I feel like they left it inside me. Harry, at least you should do more exercise. You go from the lot to the TV in the den to bed. You never play golf anymore. Well, it's no fun with the old gang gone. The kids out there at the Flying Eagle don't want an old man in their foursome. In Florida, I'll pick it up again. That's something else we ought to talk about. What's the point of my getting the salesperson's license if we go right down to Florida for 6 months? I can never build up any local presence. Local presence? You've got lots of it. You're Fred Springer's daughter and Harry Angstrom's wife. And now you're a famous coke addict's mother. I mean professionally. It's a phrase Mr. Lister uses. It means the people know you're always there, not off in Florida like some person who doesn't take her job seriously. So, he says, Florida was good enough to stash me in when I was manager at Springer Motors to get me out of Nelson's way, but now you think you're a working girl, we can just forget it, Florida. Well, Janice allows, I was thinking one possibility to help with the company's debts might be to sell the condo. Sell it? Over my dead body, he says, not so much meaning it as enjoying the sound of his voice, indignant like one of those perpetually outraged fathers on a TV sitcom, or like silver-haired Steve Martin in the movie Parenthood, which they saw the other night because one of Janice's real estate buddies thought it was so funny. My blood's got too thin to go through a northern winter. In response, Janice looks as if she is about to cry, her dark brown eyes warm and glassy-looking, just like little Roy's before he lets loose with one of his howls. Harry, don't confuse me, she begs. I can't even take the license exam until October. I can't believe you'd immediately make me go down to Florida, where the license is no good just so you can play golf with some people older and worse than you, who beat you anyway and take $20 every time. Well, what am I supposed to do around here while you run around showing off? The lot's finished, kaput, or whatever the Japanese word is, finito. And even if it's not, if the kid's halfway straightened out, you'll want him back there, and he can't stand me around. We have different styles. We get on each other's nerves. Maybe you won't now. Maybe Nelson will just have to put up with you and you with him. Harry humbly tells her, I'd be willing. Father and son, together against the world, rebuilding the lot up from scratch. The vision excites him for the moment. Shooting the bull with Benny and Elvira, while Nelson skitters around out there in the lake of rooftops, selling used cars like hotcakes. Springer Motors back to what it used to be before Fred got the Toyota franchise. So they owe a few $100,000. The government owes trillions, and nobody cares. She sees hope in his face and touches his cheek a third time. At night now, Harry, having to arise at least once and sometimes, if there's been more than one beer with television, twice, has learned to touch his way across the bedroom in the pitch dark, touching the glass top of the bedside table, and then with an outreached arm after a few blind steps the slick varnished edge of the high bureau, and from there to the knob of the bathroom door. Each touch, it occurs to him every night, leaves a little deposit of sweat and oil from the skin of his fingertips. Eventually it will darken the varnished bureau edge, as the hems of his golf pants pockets have been rendered grimy by his reaching in and out for tees and ball markers, round after round over the years. And that accumulated deposit of his groping touch he sometimes thinks, when the safety of the bathroom and its luminescent light switch has been attained, will still be there, a shadow on the varnish, a microscopic cloud of his body oils when he is gone. "Don't push me, honey," Janice says, in a rare tone of direct appeal that makes his hard old heart accelerate with revived husbandly feeling. "This horrible thing with Nelson really has been a stress, though I may not always show it. I'm his mother. I'm humiliated. I don't know what's going to happen exactly. Everything's in flux." His chest feels full. His left ribs cage a twinge. His vision of working side by side with Nelson has fled, a pipe dream. He tries to make Janice, so frighteningly unusually somber and frontal, smile with a tired joke. "I'm too old for flux," he tells her. Nelson is scheduled to return from rehab the same day that the second U.S. congressman in 2 weeks, a white Republican this time, is killed in a plane crash. One in Ethiopia, one in Louisiana. One a former Black Panther, and this one a former sheriff. You don't think of being a politician as being such a hazardous profession, but it makes you fly. Prue drives to get her husband at the halfway house in North Philadelphia, while Janice babysits. Soon after they arrive, Janice comes home to Penn Park. "I thought they should be alone with each other, the four of them," she explains to Harry. "How did he seem?" She thoughtfully touches her upper lip with the tip of her tongue. "He seemed serious, very focused and calm, not at all jittery like he was. I don't know how much Prue told him about Toyota withdrawing the franchise and the $145,000 you promised we'd pay so soon. I didn't want to fling it at him right off the bat." "What did you say then?" "I said he looked wonderful. He looks a little heavy, actually, and I told him you and I were very proud of him for sticking it out." "Huh? Did he ask about me, my health?" "Not exactly, Harry. But he knows we'd have said something if anything more was wrong with you. He seemed mostly interested in the children. It was really very touching. He took them both off with him into the room where Mother used to have all the plants, what we called the sun parlor, and apologized for having been a bad father to them, and explained about the drugs, and how he had been to a place where they taught him how to never take drugs again." "Did he apologize to you for having been a bad son? To Prue for being a crappy husband?" "I have no idea what he and Prue said to each other. They had hours in the car together. The traffic around Philadelphia is getting worse and worse, what with all the work on the expressway. All the roads and bridges are falling apart at once." "He didn't ask about me at all?" "He did, of course he did, honey. You and I are supposed to go over there for dinner tomorrow night." "Oh, so I can admire the drugless wonder. Great." "You mustn't talk like that. He needs all of our support. Returning to your milieu is the hardest part of recovery." "Milieu, huh? So that's what we are." "That's what they call it. He's going to have to stay away from that druggy young people's crowd that meets at the laid-back. So his immediate family must work very hard to fill in the gap." "Oh, my God, don't sound so fucking goody-goody," he says. Resentment churns within him. He resents Nelson's getting all this attention for being a prodigal son. He resents Janice's learning new words and pushing outward into new fields away from him. He resents the fact that the world is so full of debt and nobody has to pay. Not Mexico or Brazil, not the sleazy S&L banks, not Nelson. Rabbit never had much use for old-fashioned ethics, but their dissolution eats at his bones. The night and the next day pass in bed and at the lot. He tells Benny and Elvira that Nelson is back, and he looked fat to his mother, but didn't announce any plans. Elvira has received a call from Rudy Krause asking if she wanted to come over to Route 422 and sell for him. A Mr. Shimada spoke very highly of her. Also, she hears that Jake is leaving the Volvo Olds in Oriole and heading up a Lexus agency toward Pottstown. For now, though, she would rather hang loose here and see what Nelson has in mind. Benny's been asking around at other agencies and isn't too worried. What happens, happens, you know what I mean? As long as I got my health and my family, those are my priorities. Harry has asked them not to tell anyone in service yet about Mr. Shimada's surprise attack. He feels increasingly detached. As he walks the plastic-tiled display floor, his head seems to float above it as dizzily high as his top-hatted head above the pitted, striped asphalt that day of the parade. He drives home, catches the beginning of Brokaw on 10. He may have a kind of hair-lip, but at least he doesn't say a boat. Before Janice insists he get back in the Celica with her and drive across Brewer to Mount Judge for the zillionth time in his life. Nelson has shaved his mustache and taken off his earring. His face has a playground tan, and he does look plump. His upper lip, exposed again, seems long and puffy and bulging outward like Ma Springer's used to. That's who it turns out he resembles. She had a tight, stuffed-skin sausage look that Harry can see now developing in Nelson. The boy moves with a certain old lady stiffness, as if the rehab has squeezed the drugs and the jitters out of him, but also his natural nervous quickness. For the first time he seems to his father middle-aged, and his thinning hair and patches of exposed scalp part of him, and not just a condition that will heal. He reminds Harry of a minister, a slightly sleek and portly representative of some no-name sect like that lame brain who buried Thelma. A certain acquired formality extends to his clothes. Though the evening is seasonably humid and warm, he wears a striped necktie with a white shirt. making Harry feel falsely youthful in his soft-collared polo shirt with the Flying Eagle emblem. Nelson met his parents at the door, and after embracing his mother, attempted to do the same with his father, awkwardly wrapping both arms around the much taller man and pulling him down to rub scratchy cheeks. Harry was taken by surprise and not pleased. The embrace felt showy and queer and forced, the kind of thing these TV evangelists tell you to do to one another before they run off screen and get their secretaries to lay them. He and Nelson have hardly touched since the boy's age hit double digits. Some kind of reconciliation or amends was no doubt intended, but to Harry it felt like a right his son has learned elsewhere, and that has nothing to do with being an Angstrom. Prue, in her turn, seems bewildered by suddenly having a minister for a husband. When Harry bends down, expecting the soft, warm push of her lips on his, he gets instead her dry cheek averted with a fearful quickness. He is hurt, but can't believe he has done anything wrong. Since their episode that wild and windy night, the silence from her side has indicated a wish to pretend it never happened, and with his silence he has indicated that he is willing. He hasn't the strength anymore, the excess vitality for an affair. Its danger, its demand performances, the secrecy added like a filigree to your normal life, your gnawing preoccupation with it, and with the constant threat of its being discovered and ended. He can't bear to think of Nelson's knowing, whereas Ronnie's knowing he didn't much mind. He even enjoyed it, like a sharp elbow given under the basket. Thelma and he had been two of a kind, each able to gauge the risks and benefits, able to construct together a stolen space in which they could feel free for an hour, free of everything but each other. Within your own generation, the same songs, the same wars, the same attitudes toward those wars, the same rules and radio shows in the air, you can gauge the possibilities and impossibilities. With a person of another generation, you are treading water, playing with fire. So he doesn't like to feel even this small alteration in Prue's temperature, this coolness like a rebuke. The children eat with them, Judy and Harry on one side of the Springers' mahogany dining room table, set as if for a holiday, Janice and Roy on the other, Prue and Nelson at the heads. Nelson offers grace. He makes them all hold hands and shut their eyes, and after they're ready to scream with embarrassment, pronounces the words, peace, health, sanity, love. Amen, says Prue, sounding scared. Judy can't stop staring up at Harry to see what he makes of it. Nice, he tells his son. That's something you learned at the detox place? Not detox, Dad. Rehab. Whatever it was full of religion. You got to admit you're powerless and dependent on a higher power. That's the first principle of AA and NA. As I remember it, you didn't used to go much for any higher power stuff. I didn't and still don't in the form that Orthodox religion presents it in. All you have to believe in is a power greater than ourselves, God as we understand him. Everything sounds so definite and pat, Harry has to fight the temptation to argue. No, great, he says. Anything that gets you through the night, as Sinatra says. Mim had quoted that to him once. In this Springer house tonight, Harry feels a huge and regretful distance from Mim and Mom and Pop and all that sunken, God-fearing Jackson Road 30s, 40s world. You used to believe a lot of that stuff, Nelson tells him. I did. I do, Rabbit says, irritating the kid he knows with his amiability. But he has to add, Hallelujah. When they stuck that catheter into my heart, I saw the light. Nelson announces, They tell you at the center that there'll be people who mock you for going straight, but they don't say one of them will be your own father. I'm not mocking anything. Jesus, have all the peace and love and sanity you want. I'm all for it. We're all for it, right, Roy? The little boy stares angrily at being suddenly singled out. His loose, wet lower lip begins to tremble. He turns his face toward his mother's side. Prue tells Harry in a soft, directed voice in which he does sense a certain mist of acknowledgment, of rain splashing at a screened window. Roy's been very upset, readjusting to Nelson's coming back. I know how he feels, Harry says. We'd all gotten used to his not being around. I know how he feels, Harry says. We'd all gotten used to his not being around. Nelson looks toward Janice in protest and appeal, and she says, Nelson, tell us about the counseling work you did, in the fake tone of one who has already heard about it. As Nelson speaks, he sits with a curious, tranquilized stillness. Harry is used to the kid, from little on up, being full of nervous, elusive twitches that yet had something friendly and hopeful about them. Mostly, he says, you just listen and let them work it out through their own verbalization. You don't have to say much, just show you're willing to wait and listen. The most hardened street kids eventually open up. Once in a while you have to remind them you've been there yourself, so their war stories don't impress you. A lot have been dealers, and when they start bragging how much money they made, all you have to do is ask, "Where is it now?" They don't have it, Nelson tells the listening table, his own staring children. They blew it. Speaking of blowing it, Harry begins, Nelson overrides him with his steady-voiced sermon. You try to get them to see themselves that they are addicts, that they weren't outsmarting anybody. The realization has to come from them, from within. It's not something they can accept imposed on them by you. Your job is to listen. It's your silence, mostly, that leads them past their own internal traps. You start talking, they start resisting. It takes patience and faith. Faith that the process will work. And it does. It invariably does. It's thrilling to see it happen again and again. People want to be helped. They know things are wrong. Harry still wants to speak, but Janice intercedes by telling him, loudly for their audience at the table, one of Nelson's ideas about the lot is to make it a treatment center. Brewer doesn't have anything like the facilities it needs to cope with the problem, the drug problem. That's the absolutely dumbest idea I've ever heard, Harry says promptly. Where's the money in it? You're dealing with people who have no money. They've blown it all for drugs. Nelson is goaded into sounding a bit more like his old self. He whines, "There's grant money, Dad, federal money, state, even Do-Nothing Bush admits we got to do something. You've got 20 employees you've fucked up over there at the lot, and most of them have families. What happens to the mechanics in service? What about your sales reps, poor little Elvira? They can get other jobs. It's not the end of the world. People don't stick with jobs the way your scared generation did." "Yeah, scared. With your generation on the loose, we got reason to be scared. How would you ever turn that cement block shed over there into a hospital?" "It wouldn't be a hospital. You're already $150,000 in the hole to Toyota Incorporated and 2 weeks to pay it off in, not to mention the $75,000 you owe Brewer Trust. Those purchases in Slim's name, the cars never left the lot, so there's really no... Not to mention the used you sold for cash you put in your own pocket." "Harry," Janice says, gesturing toward their audience of listening children, "this isn't the place." "There is no place where I can get a handle on what this lousy kid has done. Over 200,000 fucking shekels. Where's it going to come from?" Sparks of pain flicker beneath the muscles of his chest. He feels a dizziness in which the faces at the table float as in a sickening soup. Bad sensations have been worsening lately. It's been over 3 months since that angioplasty opened his LAD. Dr. Bright warned that restenosis often sets in after 3 months. Janice is saying, "But he's learned so much, Harry. He's so much wiser. It's as if we sent him to graduate school with the money." "School? All this school? What's so great about school all of a sudden? School's just another rip-off. All it teaches you is how to rip off dopes that haven't been to school yet." "I don't want to get back to school," Judy pipes up. "Everybody there is stuck up." "I don't mean your school, honey." Rabbit can hardly breathe. His chest feels full of bits of styrofoam that won't dissolve. He must get himself unaggravated. From the head of the table, Nelson radiates calm and solidity. "Dad, I was an addict. I admit it," he says. "I was doing crack, and a run of that gets to be expensive. You're afraid to crash and need a fresh hit every 20 minutes. If you go all night, you can run through thousands. But that money I stole didn't all go to my habit. Lyle needed big money for some experimental stuff the FDA jerks are sitting on and has to be smuggled in from Europe and Mexico." "Lyle," Harry says with satisfaction. "How is the old computer whiz?" He seems to be holding his own for the time being. "He'll outlive me," Harry says as a joke, but the real possibility of it stabs him like an icicle. "So, Springer Motors," he goes on, trying to get a handle on it, "went up in coke and pills for a queer." How queer, he wonders, staring at his middle-aged, fattened-up, rehabilitated son, is the kid. Prue's answer to that had never quite satisfied him. If Nelson wasn't queer, how come she let Harry ball her? A lot of pent-up hunger there, her coming twice like that. Nelson tells him in that aggravating, tranquilized, nothing-can-touch-me tone, "You get too excited, Dad, about what really isn't, in this day and age, an awful lot of money. You have this depression thing about the dollar. There's nothing holy about the dollar. It's just a unit of measurement." Oh, thanks for explaining that. What a relief. As to Toyota, it's no big loss. The company's been stale for years, in my opinion. Look at their TV ads for the Lexus compared with Nissan's for the Infiniti. There's no comparison. Infinitis are fantastic. There's no car in them, just birds and trees. They're selling a concept. Toyota's selling another load of tin. Don't be so fixated about Toyota. Springer Motors is still there, Nelson states. The company still has assets. Mom and I are working it out, how to deploy them. Good luck, Harry says, rolling up his napkin and reinserting it in its ring, a child's ring of some clear substance filled with tiny needles of varied color. In our 33 years of marriage, your mother hasn't been able to deploy the ingredients of a decent meal on the table, but maybe she'll learn. Maybe Mr. Lister will teach her how to deploy. Prue, that was a lovely meal. Excuse the conversation. You really have a way with fish. Love those little spicy-like peas on top. As he shakes out a nitrostat from the small bottle he carries everywhere, he sees his hands trembling in a new way. Not just a tremor, but jumping as if with thoughts all their own, that they aren't sharing with him. Capers, Prue says softly. Harry, Nelson is coming back to the lot tomorrow, Janice says. Great. That's another relief. I wanted to say, Dad, thanks for filling in. The summer stat sheets look pretty good, considering. Considering? We pulled off a miracle over there. That Elvira is dynamite, as I guess you know. This Jap that gave us the axe wants to hire her for Rudy over on 422. The inventory is being shifted to his lot. He turns to Janice and says, I can't believe you're putting this loser back in charge. Janice says, in the calm tone everybody at the table is acquiring, as if to humor a madman, He's not a loser. He's your son, and he's a new person. We can't deny him a chance. In a voice more wifely than Janice's, Prue adds, He really has changed, Harry. A day at a time, Nelson recites, with the help of a higher power. Once you accept that help, Dad, it's amazing how nothing gets you down. All these years, I think I've been seriously depressed. Everything seemed too much. Now I just put it all in God's hands, roll over, and go to sleep. You have to keep up the program, of course. There are local meetings, and I drive down to Philly once a week to see my therapist and check on some of my old kids. I love counseling. He turns to his mother and smiles. I love it, and it loves me. Harry asks him, These druggy kids you deal with, they all black? Not all. After a while, you don't even see that anymore. White or black, they have the same basic problem, low self-esteem. Such knowingness, such induced calm and steadiness and virtue. It makes Rabbit feel claustrophobic. He turns to his granddaughter, looking for an opening, a glint, a ray of undoctored light. He asks her, What do you make of all this, Judy? The child's face wears a glaze of perfection, perfect straight teeth, perfectly spaced lashes, narrow gleams in her green eyes and along the strands of her hair. Nature is trying to come up with another winner. I like having Daddy back, she says, and not so crazy. He's more responsible. Again he feels that words are being recited, learned at a rehearsal he wasn't invited to attend. But how can he wish anything for this child but the father she needs? Out on the curb, he asks Janice to drive the Celica, though it means adjusting the seat and the mirrors. Heading back around the mountain, he asks her, You really don't want me back at the lot? He looks down at his hands. Their jumping has subsided, but is still fascinating. I think for now, Harry, let's give Nelson the space. He's trying so hard. He's full of AA bullshit. It's not bullshit if you need it to live a normal life. He doesn't look like himself. He will as you get used to him. He reminds me of your mother. She was always laying down the law. Everybody knows he looks just like you, only not as tall, and he has my eyes. The park, its shadowy walks, its decrepit tennis courts, its memorial tank that will never fire another shot. You can't see these things so clearly when you're driving. They go by like museum exhibits whose labels have all peeled off. He tries to climb out of his trapped and angry mood. Sorry if I sounded ugly at dinner in front of the grandchildren. We were prepared for much worse, she says serenely. I didn't mean to bring up the money or any of that stuff at all, but somebody has to. You're in real trouble. I know, Janice says, letting the streetlights of Upper Weiser wash over her. Her stubborn, blunt-nosed profile, her little hands tight on the steering wheel, the diamond and sapphire ring she inherited from her mother. But you have to have faith. You've taught me that. I have? He is pleasantly surprised to think that in 33 years he has taught her anything. Faith in what? In us. In life, she says. Another reason I think you should stay away from the lot now. You've been looking tired. Have you been losing weight? A couple pounds. Isn't that good? Isn't that what the hell I'm supposed to be doing? It depends on how you do it, Janice says, so annoyingly full of new information, new presumption. She reaches over and gives his inner upper thigh, right where they inserted the catheter and he could have bled to death, a squeeze. We'll be fine, she lies. Now August, muggy and oppressive in its middle weeks, is bringing summer to a sparkling distillation, a final clarity. The fairways at the Flying Eagle, usually burnt out and as hard as the cart paths this time of year, with all the rain they've had, are still green, but for the ruff of reddish-brown buckgrass and an occasional spindly maple sapling beginning to show yellow. It's the young trees that turn first, more tender, more attuned, more fearful. Ronnie Harrison still swings like a blacksmith, short backswing, ugly truncated follow-through, sometimes a grunt in the middle. No longer needed at the lot, needing a partner if he was going to take up golf again, Rabbit remembered Thelma's saying how they had had to resign from the club because of her medical bills. Over the phone, Ronnie had seemed surprised. Harry had surprised himself, dialing the familiar digits trained into his fingers by the dead affair, but had accepted, surprisingly. They were making peace, perhaps, over Thelma's body. Or reviving a friendship. Not a friendship, an involvement, that had existed since they were little boys in knickers and high-top sneakers scampering through the pebbly alleys of Mount Judge. When Harry thinks back through all those years to Ronnie's pugnacious, thick-lipped, dull-eyed face as it loomed on the elementary school playground, to Ronnie crowingly playing with his big pale cucumber of a prick, circumcised and sort of flat on its upper side, in the locker room, and then to Ronnie on the rise and on the make in his bachelor years around Brewer, one of the guys it turned out who had gone with Ruth before Rabbit did, Ronnie in those years full of smart-ass talk and dirty stories, a slimy operator. And then to Ronnie married to Thelma, and working for Schuylkill Mutual, a kind of a sad sack, really, plugging along doggedly, delivering his pitch, talking about your loved ones, and when you're out of the picture, slowly becoming the wanly, smiling, bald man in the photo on Thelma's dresser, whom Harry could feel looking up his ass. So once to Thelma's amusement, he got out of bed and put the photo flat on the bureau top. So afterward she always turned it away before he arrived of an afternoon. And then to Ronnie as a widower, with the face of a bleached prune, pulled-looking wrinkles down from his eyes, an old guy's thin skin showing pink at the cheekbones. Harry feels that Ronnie has always been with him, a presence he couldn't avoid, an aspect of himself he didn't want to face but now does. That club-like cock, those slimy jokes, the blue eyes looking up his ass, what the hell, we're all just human, bodies with brains at one end and the rest just plumbing. Their first round, playing as a twosome, they have a good enough time that they schedule another, and then a third. Ronnie has his old clients, but he's no longer out there generating new business among the young husbands. He can take an afternoon off with a little notice. Their games are rusty and erratic, and the match usually comes down to the last hole or two. Will Harry's fine big free swing deliver the ball into the fairway or into the woods? Will Ronnie look up and scull an easy chip across the green into the sand trap, or will he keep his head down, his hands ahead, and get the ball close to save a par? The two men don't talk much, lest the bad blood between them surface. The sight of the other messing up is so hilariously welcome as to suggest affection. They never mention Thelma. On the 17th, a long par 4 with a creek about 190 yards out, Ronnie plays up short with a 4-iron. That's a chicken shit way to play it, Harry tells him, and goes with the driver. Concentrating on keeping his flying right elbow close to his body, he catches the ball sweet, clearing the creek by 30 yards. Ronnie, compensating, tries too hard on his next shot. Needing to take a 3-wood, he roundhouses a big banana ball into the pine woods on the Mount Pemaquid side of the fairway. Thus relieved of pressure, Rabbit thinks easy does it on his 6-iron and clicks off a beauty that falls into the heart of the green as if straight down a drainpipe. His par leaves him one up, so he can't lose and only has to tie to win. Expansively, he says to Ronnie as they ride the cart to the 18th tee, "How about that Voyager 2? To my mind, that's more of an achievement than putting a man on the moon. In the Standard yesterday, I was reading where some scientist says it's like sinking a putt from New York to Los Angeles." Ronnie grunts, sunk in a losing golfer's self-loathing. Clouds on Neptune, Rabbit says, and volcanoes on Triton. What do you think it means? One of his Jewish partners down in Florida might have come up with some angle on the facts, but up here in Dutch country, Ronnie gives him a dull, suspicious look. Why would it mean anything? Your Honor. Rabbit feels rubbed the wrong way. You try to be nice to this guy, and he snubs you. He is an ugly prick and always was. You offer him the outer solar system to think about, and he brushes it aside. He crushes it in his coarse brain. Harry feels a fine excessiveness in that spindly machine's feeble but true transmissions across billions of miles, a grace of sorts that chimes with the excessive beauty of this crystalline late summer day. He needs to praise. Ronnie must know some such need, or he and Thelma wouldn't have attended that warehouse of a no-name church. Those 3 rings nobody ever saw before, Harry insists, just like drawn with a pencil, echoing Bernie Drexel's awe at the thinness of flamingo legs. But Ronnie has moved off over by the ball washer, pretending not to hear, and takes a series of vicious practice swings, anxious to begin the hole and avenge his previous poor showing. Disappointed, distracted by thoughts of brave Voyager, Rabbit lets his right elbow float at the top of the backswing and cuts weakly across the ball, slicing it, on a curve as uncanny as if plotted by computer, into the bunker in the buck grass to the right of the fairway. The 18th is a par 5 that flirts with the creek coming back, but should be an easy par. In his golfing prime, he more than once birdied it. Yet he has to come out of the bunker sideways with a wedge and then hits his 3-iron, not his best club, but he needs the distance, fat, trying too hard just like Ronnie on the last hole, and winds up in the creek, his yellow pinnacle finally found under a patch of watercress. The drop consumes another stroke, and he's so anxious to nail his 9-iron right to the pin, he pulls it. So he lies 5 on the deep fringe to the left of the green. Ronnie has been poking along, hitting ugly low shots with his blacksmith swing, but staying out of trouble, on in 4, so Rabbit's only hope is to chip in. It's a grassy lie, and he fluffs it. Like the worst kind of moronic golfing coward, he forgets to hit down and through. And the ball moves maybe 2 feet onto the frog hair short of the green in 6. And Ronnie has a sure 2 putts for a 6 and a crappy win. If there's one thing Harry hates, it's losing to a bogey. He picks up his pinnacle and with a sweeping heave throws the ball into the pine woods. Something in his chest didn't like the big motion, but it is bliss of sorts to see the tormenting orb disappear in a distant swish and thud. The match ends tied. So, no blood, Ronnie says, having rolled his 12-footer to within a gimme. Good match, Harry grunts, deciding against shaking hands. The shame of his collapse clings to him. Who says the universe isn't soaked in disgrace? As they transfer balls and tees and sweaty gloves to the pocket of their bags, Ronnie, now that it's his turn to feel expansive, volunteers, "Did you see last night on Peter Jennings, the last thing? They showed the photographs of the rings and the moon moving away, and then a composite they had made of the various shots of Neptune projected onto a ball and twirled. So the whole planet was there, like a toy. Incredible," Ronnie admits, what they can do with computer graphics. The image faintly sickens Harry, of Voyager taking those last shots of Neptune and then sailing off into the void forever. How can you believe how much void there is? The golf bags in the rack here by the pro shop throw long shafts of shadow. These days are drawing in. Harry is thirsty and looks forward to a beer on the club patio, at one of the outdoor tables, under a big green and white umbrella, beside the swimming pool with its cannonballing kids and budding bimbos, while the red sun sinks behind the high horizon of Mount Pemaquid. Before they head up for the beers, the 2 men look directly at each other by mistake. On an unfortunate impulse, Rabbit asks, "Do you miss her?" Ronnie gives him an angled squint. His eyelids look sore under his white eyelashes. "Do you?" Ambushed, Rabbit can barely pretend he does. He used Thelma, and then she was used up. "Sure," he says. Ronnie clears his ropey throat and checks that the zipper on his bag is up, and then shoulders the bag to take to his car. "Sure you do," he says. "Try to sound sincere. You never gave a fuck. No, excuse me, a fuck is exactly what you gave." Harry hangs between impossible alternatives. To tell him how much he enjoyed going to bed with Thelma, Ronnie's smiling photo watching, or to claim that he didn't. He answers merely, "Thelma was a lovely woman." "For me," Ronnie tells him, dropping his pugnacious manner and putting on his long widower's face, "it's like the bottom of the world has dropped out. Without Thel, I'm just going through the motions." His voice gets all froggy disgustingly. When Harry invites him up on the patio for the beers, he says, "No, I'd better be getting back. Ron Jr. and his newest significant other are having me over for dinner." When Harry tries to set a date for the next game, he says, "Thanks, old bunny, but you're the member here. You're the one with the rich wife. You know the Flying Eagle rules. You can't keep having the same guest. Anyway, Labor Day's coming. I better start getting back on the ball or school'll think I'm the one who died." He drives his slate-gray Celica home to Penn Park. Janice's Camry is not in the driveway, and he thinks the phone ringing inside might be her. She's almost never here anymore, off at her classes, or over in Mount Judge babysitting, or at the lot consulting with Nelson, or in Brewer with her lawyer and those accountants Charlie told her to hire. He works the key in the lock. Maddening the scratchy way the key doesn't fit in the lock instantly. It reminds him of something from way back, something unpleasant that hollows his stomach. But what? And shoves the door open with his shoulder and reaches the hall phone just as it's giving what he knows will be its dying ring. "Hello?" He can hardly get the word out. "Dad, what's the matter?" "Nothing. Why?" "You sound so winded." "I just came in. I thought you were your mother." "Mom's been here. I'm still at the lot. She suggested I call you. I've got this great idea." "I've heard it. You want to open a drug treatment center." "Maybe someday down the road, but for now I think we should work on the lot as what it is. It looks great, by the way, with all those little Toyotas in those funny colors of theirs gone. People are still coming in to buy used. They think we must be having a bargain sale. And a couple of companies are interested in the location. Hyundai, for instance, has this big new place over past Hayesville, but the location is up behind a cloverleaf and nobody can figure out how to get to it. There's too much landscaping. They'd love to have a spot right on 111. But what I'm calling about was this idea I got last night. I ran it past Mom. She said to talk to you." Okay, you're good to include me," Harry says. "Last night I was out on the river, over west of the city where they have all these little river cottages with colored lights and porches and steps going down into the water." "I don't know, actually. I've never been there, but go on." "Well, Prue and I were over there last night with Jason and Pam. You may have heard me mention them." "Vaguely." All these pauses for confirmation, they are wearing Harry down. Why can't the kid just spit it out? Is his father such an ogre? Anyway, this guy they know has one of these cottages. It was neat, the colored lights and music on the radios, and up and down the river all these boats, people water skiing and all. Sounds terrific. I hope Jason and Pam don't belong to that old Lyle Slim crowd. They knew him, but they're straight, Dad. They're even thinking of having a baby. If you're going to keep the coke licked, you got to stay away from the old coke crowd. Like I said, they're real straight arrow. One of their best friends is Ron Harrison, Jr., the carpenter. What is that supposed to mean? Does Nelson know about him and Thelma? Okay, Harry says. So we were sitting there on the porch, and this fantastic thing goes by, a motorcycle on the water. They have different names for them, wet bikes, surf jets, jet skis. Yeah, I've seen them in Florida, out on the ocean. They look unsafe. Dad, this was the best I ever saw. It went like a rocket, just buzzed along. Jason said it's called a Yamaha Wave Runner, and it operates on a new principle. I don't know, it compresses water somehow and then shoots it out the back. And he said the only guy who sells them, a dinky little backyard shop up toward Shoemakersville, can't keep them in stock. And anyway, he's not that interested. He's a retired farmer who just does it as a hobby. So I called Yamaha's sales office in New York this morning and talked to a guy. It wouldn't be just wave runners we'd sell, of course. We'd carry the motorcycles and their snowmobiles and trailers, and they make generators a lot of small companies use, and these 3- and 4-wheelers, ATVs, that farmers have now to get around their places, a lot more efficient than electric golf carts. Nelson, wait, don't talk so fast. What about Manny and the boys over in service? It isn't Manny anymore, Dad, it's Arnold. I meant to say Arnold, the guy who looks like a pig in pajamas mincing around. I know who Arnold is. I don't care who he is, he or she for that matter, who heads the fucking service division. They're used to cars. Big things with 4 wheels that run on gasoline instead of compressed water. They can adjust. People can adjust if you're under a certain age. Anyway, Mom and I have already trimmed service. We let go 3 mechanics and are running some ads for inspection packages. We want to pep up the used end. For a while it'll be only used, just like Grandpa Springer started out. He used to tell me how he kept the Toyotas out and back, out of sight. People had this distrust of Japanese products. In a way, it's better already. The people without much to spend aren't scared off by the new car showroom and the yen exchange rate and all, so? What do you think of the Yamaha idea? Okay, now remember, you asked, and I appreciate your asking. I'm touched by that. I realize you don't have to ask me anything. You and your mother have the lot locked up. But in answer to your question, I think it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Jet skis are a fad. Next year it'll be jet roller skates. The profit on a toy like a motorcycle or a snowmobile is maybe a tenth that on a solid family car. Can you sell 10 times as many? Don't forget there's a depression coming. Who says? I say. Everybody says. Everybody says Bush is just like Hoover. You're too young to remember Hoover. That was an inflated stock market. The market, if anything, is undersold now. Why would we have a depression? Because we don't have any discipline. We're drowning in debt. We don't even own our own country anymore. My image of this is you were sitting there on the porch of that shack with all these colored lights stoned on something or other, and this thing buzzes by and you think, wow, salvation. You're almost 33 and you're still into toys and fads. You come back from that detox place stuffed full of good intentions, and now you're getting rocks in the brain again. There is a pause. The old Nelson would have combated him with some childish defensive whining. But the voice on the other end of the line at last says, with a touch of the ministerial gravity and automated calm Rabbit had noticed at dinner the other week, "What you don't realize about a consumer society, Dad, is it's all fads in a way. People don't buy things because they need 'em. They actually need very little. You buy something because it's beyond what you need. It's something that will enhance your life, not just keep it plugging along." It sounds to me like you did too much mystic meditation at that detox place. You say detox just to bug me. It was a treatment center and then a halfway house for rehab. The detox part of it just takes a couple days. It's getting the relational poison out of your system that takes longer. Is that what I am to you, relational poison? Being snubbed by Ronnie Harrison won't stop rankling underneath this conversation. Again, Nelson is silent. Then, maybe, but not only. I keep trying to love you, but you don't really want it. You're afraid of it. It would tie you down. You've been scared all your life of being tied down. Rabbit cannot speak. He is letting a nitrostat dissolve under his tongue. It burns like a little pellet of red candy and induces a floating, dilated feeling that adds inches to his sensation of height. The kid will make him cry if he thinks about it. He says, "Let's cut the psychology and get down to earth. What the hell do you and your mother intend to do about that $150,000 Toyota has to have by the end of the month, or else it will prosecute?" "Oh," the boy says airily, "didn't Mom tell you? That's been settled. They've been paid. We took out a loan." "A loan? Who would trust you?" "Brewer Trust. A second mortgage on the lot property. It's worth at least $500,000. 145, and they consolidated it with the 75 for Slim's 5 cars, which will be coming back to us pretty much as a credit on the rolling inventory we were maintaining with Mid-Atlantic Motors. As soon as they took our inventory over to Rudy's lot, don't forget, they started owing us." "And you're somehow going to pay back Brewer Trust selling water scooters?" "You don't have to pay a loan back. They don't want you to pay it back. They just want you to keep up the installments. Meanwhile, the value of the dollar goes down and you get to tax deduct all the interest. We were underfinanced, in fact, before." "Thank God you're back in the saddle. How does your mother like the Yamaha connection?" "She likes it. She's not like you. She's open and willing to be creative. Dad, there's something I think we should try to process sometime. Why do you resent it so, me and Mom getting out into the world and trying to learn new things?" "I don't resent it. I respect it." "You hate it. You act jealous and envious. I say this in love, Dad. You feel stuck, and you want everybody to be stuck with you." He tries giving back the kid a little of his own medicine, some therapeutic silence. His nitrostat rings that little bell in the seat of his pants, and his dilated blood vessels lift weight from the world around him, making it seem delicate and distant like Neptune's rings. "It wasn't me," he says at last, "who ran Springer Motors into the ground. But do what you want. You're the Springer, not me." He can hear a voice in the background, a female voice, and then that seashell sound of a telephone mouthpiece with a hand placed over it. When Nelson's voice returns, it has changed tint, as if dipped in something by what has passed between him and Elvira. Love juices have flowed. Maybe the kid is normal after all. "Elvira has something she wants to ask you. What do you think of the Pete Rose settlement?" "Tell her I think it was the best both sides could do, and I think he should get into the Hall of Fame anyway on the strength of his numbers. But tell her Schmidt is my idea of a classy ball player. Tell her I miss her." Hanging up, Harry pictures the showroom, the late afternoon light on the dust on the display windows, tall to the sky now with all the banners down, and the fun going on, amazingly, without him. The thready lawn behind their little limestone house at 14½ Franklin Drive has the dry kiss of autumn on it, brown patches and the first few fallen leaves, cast off by the weeping cherry, his neighbor's black walnut, the sweet cherry that leans close to the house so he can watch the squirrels scrabble along its branches, and the willow above the empty cement fish pond with the blue-painted bottom and rim of real seashells. These trees still seem green and growing, but their brown leaves are accumulating in the grass. Even the hemlock toward the neighboring house of thin yellow bricks, and the rhododendrons along the palisade fence separating the Angstrom's yard from the property of the big mock Tudor house of clinker bricks, and the shaggy Austrian pines whose cast-off needles clutter the cement pond, though all evergreen, are tinged by summer's end, dusty and sweetly dried out like the smell that used to come from the old cedar hope chest where Mom kept spare blankets, and their good embroidered linen tablecloth for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and the 2 old crazy quilts she had inherited from the Reningers. It was family legend that these quilts were fabulously valuable, but when, in some family crunch when Harry was in his early teens, they tried to sell them, the best offer they could get was $60 apiece. After much talk around the porcelain kitchen table, they took the offer, and now authentic old quilts like that bring thousands if in good condition. When he thinks about those old days and the amounts of money they considered important, it's as if they were being cheated, living on slave wages, eating bread 11 cents a loaf. They were living in a financial dungeon back there on Jackson Road, and the fact that everybody else was in it too only makes it sadder. Just thinking about those old days lately depresses him. It makes him face life's constant depreciation. Lying awake at night, afraid he will never fall asleep or will fall asleep forever, he feels a stifling uselessness in things, a kind of atomic decay whereby the precious glowing present turns with each tick of the clock into the leaden slag of history. The forsythia and beauty bush both have been getting out of hand during this wet summer, and Harry, on this cloudy, cool Thursday before the Labor Day weekend, has been trying to prune them back into shape for the winter. With the forsythia, you take out the oldest stem from the base, making the bush younger and thinner and more girlish suddenly, and then cut back the most flagrant skyward shoots and the down-drooping branches on their way to re-root in among the daylilies. It doesn't do to be tender-hearted. The harder you cut back now, the more crammed with glad yellow blossoms the stubby branches become in the spring. The beauty bush poses a tougher challenge, an even tighter tangle. Any attempt to follow the tallest stems down to their origin gets lost in the net of interwoven branchlets, and the bottom thicket of small trunks is so dense as to repel a clipper or pruning saw. There is not a knife's width of space. The bush in this season of neglect has grown so tall he really should go to the garage for the aluminum step-ladder. But Rabbit is reluctant to face the garage's grimy tumble of cast-aside tires and stiff hoses and broken flower-pots and rusted tools inherited from the previous owners, who failed to clean out the garage the same way they left a stack of Playboys in an upstairs closet. In 10 years he and Janice have added their own stuff to the garage, so that gradually there wasn't space for 1 car, let alone 2 in it. It has become a cave of deferred decisions and sentimentally cherished junk so packed that if he tries to extract the ladder, several old paint cans and a lawn sprinkler bereft of its washers will come clattering down. So he stretches and reaches into the beauty bush until his chest begins to ache, with the sensation of an inflexible patch stitched to the inner side of his skin. His nitroglycerin pill got left in the sweat-rimmed pocket of his plaid golf slacks last night when he went to bed early, alone, having fed himself a beer and some corn chips after that match with Ronnie ended so sourly. To placate the pain, he switches to weeding the daylilies and the violet hosta. Wherever a gap permits light to activate the sandy soil, chickweed and crabgrass grow, and purslane, with its hollow red stems, covers the earth in busy round-leaved zigzags. Weeds, too, have their styles, their own personalities that talk back to the gardener in the days of the task. Chickweed is a good weed, soft on the hands unlike thistles and burdock, and pulls easily. It knows when the jig is up and comes willingly, where wild cucumber keeps breaking off at one of its many joints, and grass and red sorrel and poison ivy spread underground, like creeping diseases that cannot be cured. Weeds don't know they're weeds. Safe next to the trunk of the weeping cherry, a stalk of blue lettuce has grown 8 feet tall, taller than he. A block and a half away, the traffic on Penn Boulevard murmurs and hisses, its purr marred by the occasional sudden heave and grind of a great truck shifting gears, or by an angry horn, or the whop-whop-whopping bleat of an ambulance rushing some poor devil to the hospital. You see them now and then driving down a side street, these scenes, some withered old lady being carried in a stretcher down her porch stairs in a slow-motion sled ride, her hair unpinned, her mouth without its dentures, her eyes staring skyward as if to disown her body. Or some red-faced goner being loaded into the double metal doors while his abandoned mate in her bathrobe snivels on the curb, and the paramedics close around his body like white vultures feeding. Rabbit has noticed a certain frozen peacefulness in such terminal street tableaus. A certain dignity in the doomed one, his or her moment come round at last. A finality that isolates the ensemble like a spot-lit creche. You would think people would take it worse than they do. They don't scream, they don't accuse God. We curl into ourselves, he supposes, we become numb animals, earthworms on the hook. From far across the river a siren wails in the heart of Brewer. Above, in a sky gathering its fish scales for a rainy tomorrow, a small airplane rasps as it coasts into the airport beyond the old fairgrounds. What Harry instantly loved about this house was its hiddenness. Not so far from all this traffic, it is yet not easy to find on its macadamized dead end, tucked with its fractional number among the more pretentious homes of the Penn Park rich. He always resented these snobs, and now is safe among them. Pulling into his dead-end driveway, working out back in his garden, watching TV in his den with its wavery lozenge-paned windows, Rabbit feels safe as in a burrow, where the hungry forces at loose in the world would never think to find him. Janice pulls in the pearl-gray Camry wagon. She is fresh from the afternoon class at the Penn State Extension on Pine Street. Real estate mathematics, fundamentals and applications. In a student outfit of sandals and wheat-colored sundress, with a loose-knit white cardigan thrown over her shoulders, her forehead free of those Mamie Eisenhower bangs, she looks snappy and brushed glossy and younger than her age. Everything she wears these days has shoulders. Even her cardigan has shoulders. She walks to him over what seems a great distance in the little quarter-acre yard, their property expanded by what has become a mutual strangeness. Unusually, she presents her face to be kissed. Her nose feels cold, like a healthy puppy's. "How was class?" he dutifully asks. "Poor Mr. Lister seems so sad and preoccupied lately," she says. "His beard has come in all full of gray. We think his wife is leaving him. She came to class once and acted very snooty, we all thought." "You all are getting to be a tough crowd. Aren't these classes about over? Labor Day's coming." "Poor Harry, do you feel I've deserted you this summer? What are you going to do with all this mess you've pruned away? The beauty bush looks absolutely ravaged." He admits, "I was getting tired and making bad decisions. That's why I stopped." "Good thing," she says. "There wouldn't have been anything left but stumps. We'd have to call it the ugliness bush. Listen, I don't see you out here helping, ever." "The outdoors is your responsibility. The indoors is mine. Isn't that how we do it?" "I don't know how we do anything anymore. You're never here. In answer to your question, I've planned to stack what I cut over behind the fish pond to dry out and then burn it next spring when we're back from Florida." "You're planning ahead right into 1990. I'm impressed. That year is still very unreal to me. Won't the yard look ugly all winter then, though?" "It won't look ugly. It'll look natural, and we won't be here to see it anyway." Her tongue touches the upper lip of her mouth, which has opened in thought. But she says nothing, just, "I guess we won't, if we do things as normal." "If?" She doesn't seem to hear, gazing at the fence-high heap of pruned branches. He says, "If you're so in charge of the indoors, what are we having for dinner?" "Damn," she says. "I meant to stop by at the farm stand there at the end of the bridge and pick up some sweet corn, but then I had so much else on my mind I sailed right by. I thought we'd have the corn with what's left of Tuesday's meatloaf and those dinner rolls in the bread box before they get moldy." There was a wonderful tip in the Standard about how to freshen stale bread in the microwave. I forget what exactly, something to do with water. There must be a frozen veg in the freezer part we can have instead of sweet corn. Or else we could sprinkle salt and sugar on ice cubes, he says. One thing I know's in the fridge is ice cubes. Harry, it's been on my mind to go shopping, but the IGA is so far out of the way, and the prices at the Turkey Hill are ridiculous. And the convenience store over on Penn Boulevard has those surly kids behind the counter who I think punch extra figures into the cash register. You're a shrewd shopper, all right, Harry tells her. The mackerel sky is forming a solid gray shelf in the southwest. They move together toward the house, away from the shadow of coming dark. Janice says, "So." Saying so is something she's picked up recently from her fellow students or her teachers as the word for beginning to strike a deal. "You haven't asked me how I did on my last exam." "We got them back." "How did you do?" "Beautifully, really. Mr. Lister gave me a B-, but said it would have been a B+ if I could organize my thoughts better and clean up my spelling. I know it's I before E sometimes and the other way around some other times, but when?" He loves her when she talks to him like this, as if he has all the answers. He leans the long-handled clippers in the garage against the wall behind a dented metal trash can and hangs the pruning saw on its nail. Shadowy in her sundress, she moves ahead of him up the back stairs, and the kitchen light comes on. Inside the kitchen she rummages, with that baffled, frowning expression of hers, biting her tongue-tip, in the refrigerator for edible fragments. He goes and touches her waist in the wheat-colored dress, lightly cups her buttocks as she bends over looking. Tenderly he complains, "You didn't come home until late last night." "You were asleep, poor thing. I didn't want to risk waking you, so I slept in the guest room." "Yeah, I get so groggy suddenly. I keep wanting to finish that book on the American Revolution, but it knocks me out every time. I shouldn't have given it to you for Christmas. I thought you'd enjoy it." "I did. I do. Yesterday was a hard day. First Ronnie tied me on the last hole when I had the bastard all but beaten, and then he snubbed my invitation to play again, and then Nelson called all jazzed up with some crazy scheme about water scooters and Yamaha." "I'm sure Ronnie has his reasons," Janice says. "I'm surprised he played with you at all. How do you feel about Brussels sprouts?" "I don't mind them. To me they always taste spoiled, but they're all we have. I promised to get to the IGA tomorrow and stock up for the long weekend." "We going to have Nelson and his tribe over?" "I thought we might all meet at the club. We've hardly used it this summer." He sounded hyper on the phone. Do you think he's back on the stuff already? "Harry, Nelson is very straight now. That place really has given him religion. But I agree, Yamaha isn't the answer. We must raise some capital and put ourselves on a solvent basis before we start courting another franchise. I've been talking to some of the other women getting their licenses." "You discuss our personal financial problems?" "Not ours as such, just a case study. It's all purely hypothetical. In real estate class we always have a lot of case studies. And they all thought it was grotesque to be carrying a mortgage amounting to over $2,500 a month on the lot when we have so much other property. Rabbit doesn't like the trend here. He points out, "But this place is already mortgaged to the tune of $700 a month." "I know that, silly. Don't forget this is my business now." She has stripped the Brussels sprouts of their wax paper box and put them in the plastic safe dish and put it in the microwave and punches out the time. 3 blips, a peep, and then a rising hum. "We bought this place 10 years ago," she tells him, "for $78,000 and put 15 down and have about 10 or 15 more in equity by now. It doesn't accumulate very fast in the first half of payback. There's a geometric curve they tell you about. So let's say there's still 50 outstanding.